The enemy wants to get you to respond in the flesh, not by the Spirit. So on this episode, we're going to talk about the tactics of the enemy. We're going to expose what he is doing so that we can be equipped to do everything God has called us to do and to become everything that God has called us to become. Welcome to Cutting Edge Faith. I'm Ryan Howard. This podcast is here to help you understand the times, stand for truth, and grow in your faith. There's a couple of verses I want to really set the stage with here. And the first is 2 Corinthians 2:11. It says, so that we would not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. Or other versions say his schemes or his ways. We are not ignorant. We know what we're tempted by. We know how he operates. And I want to go deeper on this episode in a particular way that he operates. But there's no confusion around how we're tempted. There's no confusion around what the enemy is using as a hook in our mouth. And so we need to deal with it. But I want to set the stage also with Romans 8:13. It says, for if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. So we don't want to live by the flesh. We want to live by the Spirit. So what does the enemy want to do? Well, he wants to get you to respond in the flesh. I mean, how does that show up? Well, one example, I was watching an interview with James Kawalia. He was high in the occult and witchcraft and all that stuff in Africa. And God saved him. He got born again. And so he's really exposing a lot of what the enemy is doing in these tactics, more details. And this guy gives us an example. There was a group of people, one pastor and 20 women, who were praying. And the enemy saw this man, James Kawalia. He was in the kingdom of darkness, and he saw the impact they were having, and so they went to try to infiltrate. And so they did all this research on these people to infiltrate that prayer meeting. And the way they did it was they found that this woman had some unforgiveness for her mother, and she was bitter towards her mother. And so they decided that would be a way that they could disrupt it and get her to respond in the flesh. Even though the woman's mother had passed away, but she remained wounded and bitter. And so they went there, and the woman actually discerned that they shouldn't be there, that they were not from God. But then the woman said, the lady said to her, well, why are you trying to push us away? By the way, you sound a lot like your mother. And the woman flipped out, and she went into the flesh, and she started just yelling and got very angry, and it was a catalyst to disrupt the entire thing. Now, the enemy is so strategic in the details of the areas of vulnerability that we have. And because that was such a simple thing, but it left her open to attack from the enemy. And that was a very strategic attack that a group of people used to take down this prayer ministry. And it was so simple, but I mean, she could have dealt with it. But it doesn't have to be a bunch of witches or any bunch of people. The enemy can just do in your mind, or can even use a friend or a spouse, a loved one, that says something just the wrong way, and it gets you to react in the flesh. And it has the same impact. It can just untangle what the Lord wants to do. And so if you respond in the flesh, you're disarmed. God's solutions can't flow through you if you're responding in the flesh. And so when we come like from a place of anger, for example, we lose our power, we lose our abilities. It disarms us. God can't operate through us the same way that he could if we were instead led by the Spirit. So when we respond in the flesh, it opens the door to the enemy to shut down the things of the Spirit. And so we can't respond in the flesh. We got to discern the areas and the wounds and the things that can hinder us from doing the assignments God has given to us. So, I mean, what is it? I mean, just take some time. Reflect on the last 7 days or the last 24 hours maybe. Seek the Lord. Have you been offended or insulted? Have you been frustrated? Have you responded with impatience or with fear? Do you have unhealed wounds, unresolved issues? Are you stuck in the past? Do you have thought patterns that aren't helpful? Do you have bitterness? Do you have anger? These are all things that are just something that the enemy can use to get us to respond in the flesh. And it can take away our ability to be Spirit-led in that moment. And so we don't want to be led by the flesh. We don't want to give in to the temptation. And so we have an assignment from the Lord, and we got to seek the Lord to know if there's anything that can be used against us. So what about you? What is it for you? Is there anything, any response in the flesh that you need to get rid of? Well, just resolve for any one or two or three things that come to mind that you're going to just pause. You're not going to respond in the flesh. You're not going to respond in anger. You're going to just quiet and just listen and let the Lord lead you and take that kind of response. And believe me, this is a message for me. I've done lots of reflecting and introspection on this. There's some areas that need to be dealt with and that I have dealt with. And so take some time to really think about that. Now, if you're watching the video of this, make sure you like and subscribe. And I want to invite you to go over and get the audio on all the podcast apps. Cutting Edge Faith, you can find Ryan S. Howard there. And because I publish more audio than I do video, so you're going to want to make sure you get that. And you can also go to howtogrowyourfaith.com, and you can get the 5 biggest mistakes that Christians make when trying to grow their faith. Thanks for joining. Would you share this with a friend? God bless, and we'll see you in the next episode.